All right, welcome to a presentation on pole vault in relation to understanding pole grip and pole and grip decisions. I'm Brooke Rasnick. I'm an assistant coach at the University of Louisville and excited to share with the coaches today, and hopefully, especially beginner pole vault coaches can kind of demystify this event and break down how we make decisions on what pole and what grip height we're going to put our athletes on as we go through practice or competitions. To give you a little bit of my background, I was a pole vaulter at Wichita State University, and then went into the coaching realm as a volunteer assistant coach at the University of Oregon for a year, and trained as a post-collegiate athlete there for 1 year, and then was hired at Kent State University for 3 years. So I got to spend a lot of time in Ohio and gain a lot of great connections there with a lot of great coaches and athletes that come from that state. And then I was hired here at the University of Louisville now about 8 years ago. So still coaching here and coaching the pole vaulters and the multi-event athletes. So to kind of get to the topic of figuring out how we evaluate making those decisions with poles and grip height, I'm going to talk you through a little bit of my coaching philosophy and how to get things structured and set up properly in order to do that well and make those decisions well as we go through our practice or our season or an athlete's career. And then we'll go through kind of really how we break down what we're looking for as we watch a vault to make those decisions. And I'm going to take you through a single session from one of my decathletes. It was his first day of this year, bending a pole, and how we just kind of transition from jump to jump. There's about 12 or 13 jumps of his from one practice to see those decisions that we made as he went through it, to know, he goes from, barely bend the pole to going over a bungee with the actual vault and what that looks like. And then kind of the bread and butter of the session is going through a pole and grip adjustment chart with videos that go with each different type of jump and the decisions that I would make to make sure that the athlete's on the right equipment with the right grip height. So to kind of get things started, as a vault coach, we make more decisions than anybody else in the venue at a track meet. So, we're deciding on, what pole to be on, what grip, where to run from on our approach, where to put your standards at. And let alone all the technical cueing that we're deciding on what to talk about with our athletes, while also being aware of the elements, the wind, the fatigue, where we're at in competition, what pole selection we actually have, how the athlete's going to respond to those decisions, and then what are the ultimate goals of the day, of the season, of the career, of trying to evaluate all of these things as we're making, those decisions as we go through a meet. So it's really important to get down to the nitty gritty of what's the beginning of understanding how a pole is supposed to move and what that looks like. So then as you gain experience as a coach, all these other factors will come, you're able to process all of those down the line, and the more experience you have watching jumps and understanding what you're looking for, the better you're going to be in making those decisions for your athletes. And it's a really unique event where, a kid can have the best ball of their lives, but if they're not on the right pole, then they don't make the bar. So it makes it unique in that situation. So we want to be as prepared as we can be as coaches to help set them up for success. As we go through decisions, safety is the number one priority. And, obviously it's one of the more dangerous events to participate in. So we want to make sure, we're keeping the kids safe. And in order to do that, that's why we create different systems and progressions to help limit errors and help exemplify consistency, confidence, communication, and then an athlete coach reliability. The more consistent an athlete is, the more confident you're going to be in decisions you make, and a little bit more aggressive you can be with some of those decisions. Where if the kid is all over the place, it makes your job a lot harder. So we want to set them up to be able to be consistent by providing them the right tools to do that. So here's some examples of different systems and what we need to do as coaches to make sure that we can set our kids up for success. So we want to make sure we understand what our pole inventory is, and know it and organize it. So as you're making decisions, you don't tell a kid to go up a pole and you don't have that next pole for them to go to. Or it's a big jump and they're not quite ready for that jump. So know what you have, clearly label your poles with their length and their stiffness. So, they're not, kids will grab the wrong pole, they don't pay attention. And the more clearly it's labeled, the less likely you're going to have a mistake, especially with younger kids that maybe have a little bit shorter attention span or not as experienced in the event area, to make sure those things don't happen and make sure they understand that this is serious. And hey, if you just, grab the wrong pole and you're not paying attention like that, you could get seriously hurt. So they're a little bit more in tune to what's going on. We measure and mark our grip heights on every pole. So, as we're going through a session, I tell a kid to go up an inch. Sometimes they'll, put the two poles next to each other and then go up, that inch, but it also allows them to just remember where they were at, and just limit mistakes on, grabbing a pole at the wrong spot. Another thing I'll do with beginners is put a hair tie or rubber band around a pole. So as they're, if they're in a session, they're going to, raise their grip a lot. They can just kind of slide that up the pole as they're going through it, so they don't have to try to remember where their hand mark was at. Another thing I really believe in is using a pole vault log. You can kind of see an example, a picture of that on the right-hand side of your screen. And this is something that I have my athletes do at every session. So they're going to record, what steps they were jumping from, where they started on the runway, what pole they were on, what their grip height was. So every time we come out, we don't have to reinvent the wheel of knowing what pole to be on from that step. We jump from a lot of different steps depending on where we're at in the season and what our focus is for that day. So the more we can have things recorded, the less jumps we waste by being on the wrong pole or being at the wrong step. We want to be as efficient as we can. So this is just a tool that will allow them to keep track. And as especially if you have a lot of different vaulters as a coach, I can't remember, what pole they need to be on from what step. So it's their job and their responsibility to record these things. We also put a tape measure down on the runway for every session, so you don't have to, worry about, remarking their step at the end of the session. We just always lay it down so it's there as we make, those adjustments on the runway. It's easy. And then we always keep our standards deep in practice. And if they're not deep, we know where they're at. I've come out to practice and the kids get the pit ready and they have their standards all the way up, 15 inches, in the high school realm or, 45 centimeters in the college realm. And I'm like, man, we're blowing through poles. And the reality is the standards are just way closer than I thought they were. So just make sure you're aware of those things. So there's just kind of examples of things that we can do as coaches to set our kids up and set ourselves up to make the best decisions as we go through practice or meet. Another thing that's really important is creating progressions. And, you have a technical progression, pole progressions, approach progressions, and those things, you have it throughout a kid's career, for the annual year and then from a single session. So I think progressions are really important to teach and to keep kids safe. And they should go from simple to complex, shorter approach to longer approach, low to high grip height, smaller poles to larger poles, and moving a pole in deep to vertical. So the example of this picture over here is Leah Welter's moving a really small pole in from a short approach. This is what, a drill shoe would do at the beginning of basically every practice we jump. And she's getting in line with the pole really well, but you can see that pole is really, going to put her pretty deep into the pit. So it's just part of our progression that we use for practice or even a meet warm up to make sure that she's dialed in technically as we move to bigger poles and longer runs. All right, so pole selections and then inventory. I get this question a lot from beginner coaches of, hey, I got, I'm starting a program, I don't have any poles, what should I buy? Really hard to answer that question without knowing what athletes you have. But if you are in a situation where you've taken over a program or you have, a set of poles, this is kind of ideally what you would want. You'd want the transitions to be smooth on the same brand of poles. I don't think that there's, an elite pole over another. I think they all, they move a little bit different. And as a kid gets really good, that maybe they match up better on a certain pole than another. But I think as long as it's a smooth transition, that kids can be successful and jump high. Poles they have a weight rating on them and a flex number. So as you go through, and if you're purchasing poles or trying to borrow poles, understanding the flex number is really important. Your weight rating would be an example of, like a 13-foot pole that's 150 pounds. That weight rating is 150 pounds. Well, that flex number may be, 24.2. So that flex number is more specific than the weight rating, because you may have, 250-pound poles and the flex numbers are different. So it's more specific. How they create a flex number is they put a pole up horizontally against the wall, and they tie weight around the middle and let the weight hang from the middle of the pole, and as far as that pole moves down in centimeters is what that flex number is. So they have a certain weight they use, depending on what brand it is, and then it's just how much it bends down, so how flexible it is. So the further it comes down, the higher that flex number is. So the softer the pole is, the more stiff it is, the less that weight brings it down, and then that's a lower flex number. So that's something to pay attention to as you look at your poles and look at your series, because there may be a bigger jump from, you may think it's a 5-pound jump or a 10-pound jump in pole, but really based on that flex number, it could be a 13-pound jump, or maybe it's only a 2-pound jump if it's a 5-pound difference. So understanding the flex numbers and figuring out, for the poles that you have, what those are is really important. Like I said, the lower the flex number, the stiffer the pole. Ideally, you're looking at a 0.6 to 0.8 difference is what you'd like. Now, every brand is different on how they do their flex numbers, so that may be more specific to a certain brand, but that just kind of gives you an idea what is ideal, and obviously not everyone has the luxury of just having whatever poles an unlimited budget to get the poles you want. But this is an example of our Spirit series of some of our 13.7s, just to kind of give you an idea of what the flex difference is as we move from pole to pole. We have 3 13.7 145s, but they're all different flexed. So they're all going to respond differently. So understanding those things as you make those decisions, or if you're in a big time meet, you got to know where to put the standards. As kid moves up the pole, you want to know if it's a bigger jump or a smaller jump from pole to pole. So now you kind of have a little bit of an idea of pole selection inventory. Here's some, kind of some troubleshooting and tips to think about as you're going through the process of making decisions or trying to fill your inventory up. Now there's a lot of companies that will rent poles out to you, or clubs, and I think that's great. And it gives you, the opportunity to give the kids the pole they need for that time. As kids are learning, they're going to go through a whole bunch of poles. Like even my college athletes, we'll go to a meet and a kid may have 12 poles they bring. That's only they're going to use from their warm up to their last competition jump. So it's a lot. It's expensive. So the more you can borrow, the more you can, rent and save money that way is great. If you have a beginner and they're, you don't have exactly what they need, they can still get a lot out of straight pulling, and so they don't specifically need a pole that can bend. So don't feel like you can't help them. They still can, get the fundamentals down without bending a pole if they're not quite ready to do that yet. Understand that every 6 inches you grip down on a pole adds about 10 pounds to the stiffness. So if you have a 13-foot, 150-pound pole and you're gripping at 12.6, it's really like 160-pound pole. So that as you kind of understand as you transition from pole to pole and move your grip height around. So if you go from a 13-foot pole to a 13.6 pole, know that that's going to add about 10 pounds of weight rating. So you typically want to go down 10 pounds in weight to make that transition easier if you have the ability to do that. One tool that we use is a takeoff box. It's about 2 or 3 inches off the ground. So it's the last step of their run as they're getting off the ground. It's like a 4 foot by 2.5 foot box. That's ours is about 2.5 inches, and the kids can come down and they jump off of that to help them move poles in if they're not confident quite going up to that next pole, or maybe you have kind of a big gap in your transition. It just gives them a little bit of confidence, makes them taller, helps them put their foot down quicker, and helps them move bigger poles in. Or if, when we transition from Gabby jumped on 14.7 poles last year, and she'd only jumped on 14 before that. We had one session before the meet, once we got the poles in, where she jumped off the box from her full approach in practice, was able to move in the 14.7s and kind of get some confidence of knowing what they felt like. And then when we went to the meet that weekend, she transitioned smoothly to the 14.7s and had a big PR with that. And we didn't have to check poles out while we were in the competition mode. Another thing just to understand, when you move to a longer pole, you don't have to move your grip up the length difference. So sometimes, kids have a misunderstanding of that. If they're going to go from a 14 to 14.6, they think they need to move the grip up 6 inches, and that's not the case. And as a coach, you want to take notes on the series of poles you have, know how they move relative to each other. So when you're making those transitions, what to expect. So when kids are jumping on in practice, and maybe it's your better athletes are jumping on them in practice, it's easy for them to transition from a short run, but that kind of gives you an idea with your less experienced kids of knowing, hey, how these poles move. So use all of that knowledge to make sure that you have a great understanding of when you ask a kid to change poles and what you expect the difference to be. All right, so getting into what are we really looking for? How do we kind of demystify what we look at when we're making those decisions? The three things that every coach is paying attention to is how fast the pole moves in, the depth of the pole or the vaulter, and how much the pole bends. So those are the three main things that we're really looking at when we're making decisions. And when the faster the pole moves in, the safer it is. We don't want to see a hesitation in the pole speed. But we also want to give the kid enough time to match up with the pole and we want them to be inverted before the pole uncoils. So if it moves in too fast, they don't have time to do that. So we got to make an adjustment. So we're looking at pole speed, the depth of the vaulter, and the pole. We want the pole to move all the way to vertical, and typically it'll move past vertical if you're being safer with your athletes. And we want the kid to land in the coach's box. Every pit should have a coach's box. We don't want them, if they're landing past it, then that's too deep. So you need to go up the pole. But if they're landing shallow and close to the box, then that's unsafe. So that's something we're looking at. It's just the depth or where a vaulter is relative to the bungee or the bar to make those decisions. And the third thing is the pole bend. Is it overbending or underbending? We want the top of the pole to continue to move forward and upward as they go through their jump. And if it sinks or if it moves in and barely bends, then we got to make adjustments. And like I said earlier, we want the athlete to get in line with the pole while the pole is still bent. You look at this image over to the right. This is a great image from David Butler, and you see that the dash mark is the actual pole, and the line is the cord of the pole. So you're seeing where you want the athlete in relation to the actual vaulting pole, and then the actual cord from their top hand to the bottom of the box, and kind of what an ideal bend looks like, and where the athlete is in relation to that bend. So every kid is different on what they can handle with a pole bend. Typically, the less experienced vaulter is going to be more successful with less bend, as they understand how to keep the pole moving and how to manage themselves with where their body is compared to the pole. But as they become better vaulters, or sometimes gymnasts coming out are great body awareness and they can handle more of a bend to start with. So it just depends on the vaulter of what that ideal bend is. All right, so we're going to pull up a video of one of my decathletes that progressed to real vaults this fall. It was his first session bending the pole. And just to kind of give you an example of how we would go through a practice session to figure out, okay, what grip height does he need, and what pole do we need to be on for him to, finish real jumps. And we took a very safe approach. We have a lot of poles in this range for him. He's only jumping for 4 total steps, but he's a pretty big dude. And so I'll pull this video and kind of play it so you can see, decisions that I made from jump to jump. To help get him in a position where he could actually go over a bungee. So he starts off, he's only going from 4 total steps the whole session. He's on a 14-foot, 145-pound pole to start with, and he's 205 pounds probably in this video. He's a big decathlete, not super experienced with the vault, but we started his grip at 12 feet, and then we just moved through poles and upped his grip height as he went through. Went through his session. So you can see that pole barely bent to start with. Just a little bit of bend, but it moved in pretty fast and moved in really deep. We went up 2 poles. Like I said, our poles are really close together. So, it's really, he probably moved up about, 5 or 6 pounds by going up 2 poles. Moved his grip height up 3 inches. So more bend, still going really deep. So we went up another pole, up 2 inches. Still going deep. If you relook at the last jump, but starting to kind of get matched up a little bit and getting enough bend to start to look like a jump. But we still needed more sticks, so we went up another pole, up another 2 inches on grip. Starting to get dialed in. Up another pole, up another 2 inches. And that pole moved a little bit slower on that last jump. So we kept everything the same, just to see what it looked like again. Put a bungee up. That time he hit it a little bit more aggressive. Went up another pole. Now we're going up 1 inch at a time because I liked how it kind of matched up. Typically when I go up a pole, every kid that I coach, our go-to is just going up 1 inch. It just makes that transition a little bit smoother. The higher you grip, the softer it makes the pole. So that's kind of how we typically transition, unless I tell them otherwise. That's what they know. They know to do that. Didn't hit that one very well, so we kept everything the same. So that's a little better. Still can move it in deeper. There you go. He hit it deeper, kept pressure on the pole. Now he's going in pretty deep, landing deep, in the back of the coach's box. So we went up another pole, up another inch. So not a great jump, so we kept everything the same. Okay, still that time moved through it again. Went up another pole, another inch. All right, now we got to the point where we could go over a bungee. So that was a lot of jumps and a lot of pulls that we transitioned to get him to actually finish in a jump and going over a bungee. But that's, a very safe way to transition a kid from straight pulling to bending a pole and being able to actually execute a full jump. So just to kind of go through that again. So as Micah was going through that practice, every time he came down the runway, he was trying to execute a finish halt and trying to move the pole deep into the pit. And my job was to help transition him safely from a lower grip on a small pole to actual vaults over a bungee. So he was trying to execute the same thing every time, but I was just, changing the equipment in his hand to make it get a more vertical jump. He started on a 14-foot, 145-pound pole, gripping 12 feet, and we ended on a 14-7, 155-pound pole, gripping 13 feet from a two-step approach. So, like I said, he was probably 205 pounds in this video, so that it seems like a really soft pole, but since he was gripping so far down on it, it was actually more like a 185-pound pole that he was on from a short run. So that's the beat. I really like spirit poles because I feel like you can grip about anywhere on it and still get it to move in and finish jumps. So then from there, what does his next session look like? So now we kind of established a grip height for a pole that he's on that he matches up well. Kind of we're looking for that money spot of grip per pole for that step. So the next session, we wouldn't start on the pole we ended on. We'd start down, 2 or 3 poles with his grip height down 2 or 3 inches from the same number of steps. And as he got dialed in, then we would move back to a 3 left approach and then he'd be able to raise his grip up. Typically, when we go back to the next step, we'll raise our grip 2 to 4 inches, and we'll move up, 5 pounds and pull. And then kind of go from there again, just trying to establish from this approach, what grip can you handle for what pull you're on, and how does it all match up well. And this kid, this is how he started the year, and about 5 sessions later, he was coming from 5 lefts on a 15-foot, 15.7, 180-pound pull, gripping 13.8, and easily making a 13.6 bar. Okay, so we started super simple, and then we just progressed every session, and got to a point where he was, doing some things pretty well. Okay, so here is a, pull grip adjustment chart. So this really breaks things down into, those 3 categories of what I'd say pole vault coaches are looking at, and then what adjustments we would make if we don't see exactly what we want to see. So this adjustment chart is solely based on expecting the kid to give you a similar vault. Obviously, that's not super realistic, depending on the experience of the kid, and how consistent they are. But this, is the bare bones of it, of if it was the same jump, what would we do differently? But then as a coach, you're making those, decisions, as, the art of coaching of, hey, I think they're going to, they were just really close on their steps. So I'm going to keep, do the same thing, move their step back, or whatever those decisions are as you change technically, in their approach and asking them to do some things better execution wise. But this is the decisions I would make based on expecting the same result. All right. So the first item on the chart is, the pull bend is what I would say is good. And before I do this, I'm going to actually show you an example of what I would want to see out of a vault. So this is a really good vault. Things are lined up and made the right decision on being on the right pull, with the right grip height, with the right standards. All right, this inter squad meet, Leah Welter has a really good jump. You can see that if we look at the pull speed, it's moving in well. There's no hesitation. It keeps moving. The depth is good. She's landing right in the middle of the coach's box. Okay. Which is great. The pull's getting all the way to vertical. So the pull depth is too vertical or a little bit past. She doesn't have much space on the front side or the back side of that bar. So our standards are in a really good spot, to execute a made jump. And then we look at the pull bend. The pole continues to move. The top of the pole continues to move upward, and in. And this is a pretty good bend for her. It's about really about a 90-degree bend. That's about right for Aaliyah. Gabby Leon isn't quite as aesthetically aware as Aaliyah, so she doesn't quite bend the pole as much. But every kid's going to be a little bit different on what they can handle. So good execution jump. So this is what we want our jumps to look like. So now as we go through this chart, we're going to tell you what adjustments I would make to get to looking more like that last jump. So the first item is, we have a good bend on the pole, but it moves deep and it moves fast. So that's a good thing typically. And so the adjustment would be to move up a pole and up 1 inch. So let's look at a couple jumps that show this example of we're going to move up a pole and up 1 inch. So really good jump. Pole moves in fast. It's a really good bend for what he can handle, but you can see where he lands. He lands pretty deep into the pit, so he's able to go up a pole. And I like how he matches up on this pole. And so we would go up another inch on his grip and keep that good matching up situation. Here's another example of the same spot on the chart. This Gabby Leon moves the pole in, matches up pretty well on it. A good bend for her, which like I said is a little bit less than Aaliyah. She's not quite able to handle as much bend. She gets in line with the pole while it's still bent, which is great. But the pole's moving way past vertical, and she's going to land pretty deep into the box, the coach's box. So we would go up a pole, up 1 inch. All right, right, number 2 on the chart is a good bend, but the athlete lands shallow and the pole does not move very fast. Okay, so this is what we definitely don't want to see. Here's an example of what that looks like. So Leah, this is the same day. We got more aggressive with poles as we went through the meet, and the heights got higher, and she didn't quite move it in. So the pole doesn't get to vertical. She's coming down on top of the bar. So really close. Way more close to the box than I would want, and not even inside the coach's box. So that next jump, we would go down a pole, down an inch, and get that pole moving in a little bit deeper to be a little bit safer. Lee's a super consistent kid as a vaulter, so I get more aggressive with her than any other kid I've probably ever coached with standards and poles, because she executes very consistently, which is allows her to get closer to her potential when she competes. Here's another jump. This is at a meet. Pole doesn't move in, just like Aaliyah's, comes down on the bar. So the safe move is, hey, there's definitely things she could execute better on a run and how she jumped, but we're going to go ahead and just go down pole, go down an inch, get that pole moving in, so we get a bar made, and then we can, she gets more dialed in, and we could go back up. All right, number 3 on the chart, the pole bend is either good or a little bit overbent, but the athlete lands shallow, and the pole speed is slow or moderate. It's okay, but a little bit slow. So in this scenario, we'd stay on the same pole and drop our grip down an inch or 2. Okay, not a bad jump. You can see he lands pretty shallow in the coach's box. Doesn't quite get lined up as much as I would want, but the pole, the bend's okay, maybe a little bit over bends for him. So he can't quite get lined up with it. On top, he's shooting out. So in this scenario, we just stayed on the same pole, but dropped his grip down an inch, and then he was able to match up on it and get it moved in a little bit deeper and stay on the pole a little bit longer. All right, so here's kind of another example in the same type of scenario. So the pole overbends, but it goes deep, but it's still kind of moving slow or moderate speed. So in this scenario, we would move up a pole, but use the same grip. So this is a beginner decathlete. So this is probably his 4th or 5th session of his career as a pole vaulter. And it doesn't, if you just, kind of freeze frame the bend on the pole, it doesn't look like it's overbending. But for him, he doesn't quite understand how to keep pressure on the pole. So it's a little bit too much bend for him. As he gets upside down, the pole just kind of doesn't give back much, and he doesn't know how to stay tight to it. So the decision was, hey, we're going to get on a little bit bigger pole, but just keep your grip height the same. And then it will be a little bit stiffer, but allow him to stay a little bit more in control on the top of the jump. Another example of this from a little bit more experienced vaulter. Okay, not a bad jump, but the pole kind of overbends a little bit for him. Maybe a little bit past kind of 90 degrees. And it just kind of moves slow into the pit. So we're going to stay on this pole and just drop his grip. Or go up a pole and keep his grip there. Still moving pretty deep into the pit. All right, number 5. This is the most unsafe vault that you'll see, and you don't want to see a lot of these at your practice, but it happens. So kid overbends the pole, lands shallow, and it moves slow. So this is a new vaulter that's getting familiar with our pole series. Really talented kid, but that's not a good looking vault. Okay, pole just doesn't quite move. It's slow. So, hey, let's just stay on it and drop our grip down 2 or 3 inches so we can get you landing a lot deeper in the pit to be a lot safer. So this next jump is basically is his next consecutive jump at practice. So we went down, I believe, 2 inches on his grip, and this was better. But he's still not quite getting it moved in all the way. And still a little bit of an overbend as he swings back on it. There's a little bit of a hesitation in the pole. So the next jump, we went down 1 more inch and then moved it in deeper and then, made the bungee. So still just over grip just a little bit too much for how he's executing. And then number 7 and 8 are examples of when the pole underbends, so it doesn't bend as much as we want, so it doesn't give the kid enough time to get matched up before it uncoils. And here's an example where she moves it deep and it moves fast, which is good. Now we just need to increase our grip height. All right, so just doesn't bend a whole lot for her skill level. So by the time she gets upside down, the pole's already straight and she's already flagging off of it. So we just need some more grip, and that pole's pretty small. So we went ahead and went up a pole, and we went up, instead of just that 1 inch, we went up 2 inches. And this is the next jump that she took. So up on the next pole, up 2 inches. Okay. Still moved in pretty well, and still is a little bit under bending still. So I would go up another inch or 2 on her grip on this same pole to see if she can get matched up even better on it before it uncoils and to get in line with the pole. So same pole, up an inch. All right, so those are examples of the pole chart to be able to reference. And like I said, this is only, we're looking at, if they're going to execute the same on the next jump. Obviously, you don't have to make a pole change on every and grip change on every jump they make. But this is obviously just showing you some different examples of how different vaults look and the decisions we would make if we would have had our grip up or down or different pole, then it would have had a better execution for that rep. So I think it's a kind of a good starting point to give you those things to look at as you're coaching and watching your kids. And like I said, the more experience you have, the more jumps you watch, the more this becomes second nature, and you just understand. It all kind of flows together, and it's easy to make those decisions. And the more experience a vaulter gets, the more they understand what they need to do with their grip height or their pole, and they know, or they're confident to go up poles, or they know that they were, the pole is too stiff, or they were over gripping, and they're normally on board with you of making those decisions. There's some coaches that they don't like to make more than one change from jump to jump at a time. We make changes all the time from where their step is to what grip they're on, obviously what pole, all those things. So, we're fortunate to have a really good pole selection to where we're able to move through poles a lot. So they're used to making that transition poles. The last thing I want as a coach is getting to a meet and we're going to a pole that maybe never jumped on before, and they feel like they have to come down the runway and kind of check it and test it and see how it moves first before they go. I want a kid that's confident that they know that they're ready for that next pole and that next, grip height, and they can come down and hit it and not have to waste an attempt. Just giving themselves confidence that, yeah, this is the right decision. So setting up those progressions, making those decisions as a coach, in practice and in meets is going to give your athletes the confidence they need to know that when you make those decisions, and sometimes you're making them together with an athlete, that they know that they're ready to perform at a high level with that pole and make the bar. So here's some great resources for advanced and beginner pole vault coaches. So there's a YouTube channel that Joel Block put together, pole vault coaching series that got put together during this COVID time period, where there's some really high level coaches that have a lot of different presentations to check out. And then a book called Beginner to Boot Cut by Alan Launders is great. And Sean Francis, just wrote his pole vault toolbox, which is also another great resource for coaches, no matter what level you're at and how much experience you have. We can always continue to learn and grow and utilize, our networks to continue to progress as coaches. If you have any questions for me, feel free to shoot me an email, and love to answer any questions about this presentation or pole vault in general, and help you, continue in your path as progressing as a coach.